Warning. The following scenes may contain references to power pages and portals which some listeners may find disturbing, especially if you've struggled with poor training in the past.
Hey all, Franco Musso here. Yes, I packed your podcast feed. I held John and Heather hostage, but don't worry. I got my wires crossed and I'm actually paying them a small ransom in the form of sponsorship. Anyway, big announcement. I'm finally releasing my online Power Pages course. This has been 5+ years in the making. It's tried and tested on citizen devs and portal makers all around the world. It's the course I wish existed when I was getting started. It's practical, it's hands-on, and it's project-based, so you're not left wondering, how the f*** would this apply to the real world? I've built in battle-tested lessons I've learned from tens of successful portal projects across various industries, budgets, and geographies. And I've formulated the most efficient route from zero to heroic launch. The tools and techniques I've chosen to show you are all based on what has the most value to you, the learner, and to your customers, all in the most compressed timeline possible. Think 80-20, focusing on the techniques that punch above their weight and deliver the majority of results. You'll get video lessons, a repeatable framework, and some super helpful workbooks. I'll also throw in my decision flows. It's going to be the closest thing you can get to having an expert on hand or being able to peek over my shoulder while I work. Interested? Visit francomusso.com/power-pages-course and secure your spot today. Disclaimer, this course isn't for you if you prefer hours of slides, theory, and little to no action. You can now take your fingers out of your ears and enjoy the awesome that is Sprint Zero.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sprint Zero podcast. My name is Heather Perriam, and I'm here with my amazing co-host, John Russell. Say hello, John.
Hello, how are you? You all right?
Yeah. We're so excited today because we're joined by Dan Barber. So if you don't know Dan is a Microsoft Business Applications MVP, and he's the founder and principal consultant of Strathos, which is a strategic consulting firm for Microsoft partners, and he's based in the Greater Bristol area. So I always like it because Dan and I are relatively close to each other, and everybody else is 1,000 miles away. He's an advisor, a strategist, a coach, mentor, and an international speaker who is really passionate about consulting culture and building great teams. So welcome to the podcast, Dan. How are you doing?
Hey, thanks very much for having me. No, real pleasure to be here. I'm really looking forward to this.
Nice.
Yeah.
First of all, we're looking forward to seeing each other, aren't we? We're all seeing each other this weekend, although this is going to come out a little bit later than that. Dan, so you founded Strathos to provide strategic consulting for Microsoft partners. What was the tipping point that made you decide to start your own company, and what has been the biggest surprise on that journey?
Ooh, there's lots to unpack there. I think first of all, to be completely frank, the motivation wasn't surrounded by money. Going contracting and things like that. Sometimes that's quite frequently that is sort of monetary led. But this was for me just around sort of control and autonomy, that sort of freedom side of things. For 20 years, I've been working for some amazing corporate clients. But obviously within a corporate structure and a corporate framework, limited in what I can do and how I can do things. So running my own organization, I've been able to set my own mission, my own values, and vision of where I want things to go. So it's been really exciting, sort of designing my own services and thinking about the market, where the need is, and doing all those different areas that before I was sort of siloed into delivery. Not as siloed as that, but you know what I mean. My focus was delivery. Now I'm looking holistically at the market and the technology space, and it's really exciting. I roll out of bed every day going, oh right, what shall I do? What shall I do today? Where what's going to be
an awesome
exciting?
feeling.
What's going to
That's really an awesome feeling. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and it's amazing because I think you and I have really bonded over having. We have some passion in similar areas, right? And one of the things that I think we connected on right away is we are very passionate that tech is not everything in consulting, right? So what kind of skills do you think consultants overlook that actually make the biggest difference to a project success?
Yeah, I mean, great question, and you're absolutely right. This is something that me and you have chatted about over a beverage or two many a time.
Diet Coke, of course.
Of course,
Yeah,
Diet Coke
absolutely.
or Fanta Zero, of course. Yeah.
Of course.
So I think we're all aware that technology is a factor in project success and project failure. But I think for me, when you're thinking about the humans, it's around clear communications, building rapport, avoiding assumptions, avoiding escalations, risks, and rework, and things like that. So I think for me, if I was going to narrow it down to sort of 3 non-tech related consultant skills I would focus on, it would be communication. Number one, getting those communication skills and all the facets of that sorted. I think commercial awareness is a big one. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're if we don't think about ourselves as business owners and we just think of ourselves as consultants, then we're not invested in the process. We're just delivering what I've been asked to deliver, and that's not helpful for the client, and it's certainly not helpful for the partner, and in turn not helpful for the individual as well. So understanding the margin, the risk, the incentives on both sides, so that we're getting towards the right thing. And
Yeah.
then lastly, I think it's that critical thinking, asking why and getting to the bottom of it. Not just we've become very good at just going, oh, you want that? Okay, let's go deliver that. Okay, without challenging it. We are consultants. We are not developers who are brought on to build a particular unit of functionality. We are consultants brought on to consult, which means advising, whether that's towards what they want or towards what they need, and those two things are very, very different, or can be very different. So that critical thinking and that questioning skill is something I'm really passionate about driving the message forward. It's sort of, if you want to be a good consultant, you ask the good questions, you get to the root of the problem by asking those sort of why type questions to make sure you're fixing the right thing or solving the right problem, rather than just solving a symptom and leaving the underlying root cause of that business pain still intact. You've just dealt with the surface layer.
Dan, what about so say if a junior consultant came to you and said, I'm struggling to be able to challenge people because I feel like I'm junior on the project, but yet they do have valid reasons why to challenge. How could you maybe help them or coach them into uh, getting them or giving them the ability to be able to do that?
Yeah, I think one is it's kind of tangential to that, which is making sure that you're doing your part to create a psychologically safe environment for you in the first place to step up and be comfortable saying something like that. And I think we all
Yeah.
aspire to have teams and environments like that, right? That's really important, but it's not on individuals; it's on the collective
In
team
that
and the
culture.
culture and the company to create that atmosphere. So,
Yeah.
assuming you're doing your part towards that, which means that you are also listening to other people's opinions who voice something, and listening and giving your opinion rather than shouting it down. Um, but in terms of getting that opinion across, I often find people can have an opinion, but they don't often back it up with the justification and the show your workings of that opinion.
The
So they
the the
go,
evidence you mean?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah. So it's like, oh, I don't think you should do a point-to-point integration. And then they just walk away. That's my opinion. And you go, yeah, but why? If you want
Why?
people to listen, if you want people to hear you and be understand and say, I don't want you to do a point. I don't think we should do a point-to-point integration because actually you're integrating with a legacy platform that's on premise and it's very unreliable. And actually, that's going to cause problems later down the track if we don't do, some form of service bus architecture or something like that. That's why my opinion exists. That's my justification, my evidence, and that allows you to be, from my perspective, be more heard because you're not just shouting down people's ideas or shouting your opinions. You're giving a rounded, holistic approach to a different opinion and a different approach
Yeah.
that makes sense.
And out of those,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, Heather, go ahead.
No, 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 no. I love this. And I think I think because obviously I'm extremely passionate about leadership and I consider with all the technical knowledge I have, right? Leadership is definitely my highest skill set. And that's where I've really got the highest level of expertise. And one of the things that you and I talked about at a conference previously is that uh, management should not be a prerequisite for your career path, right? Because not everybody should have that role. It's just, so so when you're building a team, how do you create that distinction? How do you show people you can grow without being a manager?
Mhm. So first and fundamentally, it is understanding those two terms, leadership and management. Management is a job title. Leadership
Yes,
isn't a job title.
yes,
Leadership is something you do. It's a behavior, right?
yes.
Um, and that means that every single person in an organization can be a leader in something, or a leader in many things, right?
This is
So
it.
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, you are put into a position of management, which means you are operationally responsible and accountable for doing certain things. You use measures and metrics and things like that. When you're leader, you're there to show your vision or show vision to inspire others, to motivate others. It's comes from you. It comes from the heart. So for me, that's a real instinctual difference between those two. So a leader can be a manager, and a manager is sometimes a leader. But
Sometimes,
it's
yeah.
yeah,
Interesting.
but not always.
No.
And just to be really, really clear, although you can be perceived as more effective as a manager if you're both a manager and a leader, you don't have to necessarily be a leader. You know, you can, yes, a lot of good managers are also good leaders, but a
Yes.
very, very highly effective manager might not be a visionary, might not be someone who is, inspirational and things like that. But what they could be is having real strengths in operational rigor and effectiveness. They've created a vastly effective team. And it might be that, that person's realized that their strength is management. And you know what? They've got 15 people in their team, and 5 of them are really solid leaders, really good leaders. And that's where the team gets the vision and the motivation and the innovation and things like that.
I've always said that about myself, right? Like, because definitely I'm the visionary, innovative kind of person. That's my personality in a nutshell, right? But I need to have strong managers that do handle that kind of day-to-day stuff. And I lead a practice. I do the management side of it, but when it comes to my own personal growth, um, I've got the visionary bit covered. I
Mhm.
actually need those people to come in and say, from a management perspective, these are some decisions that we need to do, and still give me the autonomy to run with that, right? And I think
Yeah.
I think the best teams will have that. Will bring those different personalities together and say, right, this guy needs to do this. I call it the boring stuff. Nobody get mad at me. We might get an email off that, but
Timesheet.
yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
Every If anybody who has ever managed me is listening to this, they will be like, timesheets on a call with Heather. That makes sense because
Yeah.
that's the stuff that I do need somebody chasing me up, being
Yeah.
like, push the button, do your administrative stuff, get these things into place, right? Um, and it's important because obviously we would not be successful
Yeah.
without those
Mhm.
people in place. But it can't be me. And
Mhm.
and and I think we do that sometimes, Dan. I think we try to say, Heather, I want you to be a visionary and I want you in the weeds, and I want you looking at all of this detailed stuff that you don't like and you're not good at, and I want you to do the whole thing, and that's where teams fail, is
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Putting
let
too much
people use their
on.
strength. And that's what
Yeah.
you do, right? That's what your
Yeah.
consultancy does, is you really
Yeah.
try to identify where the strengths are
Yeah, and
in teams.
understanding what the makeup of those teams are. I'm talking about this weekend around sort of building high performing teams.
Yes.
It you don't it's not about having a team of 15 unicorns. You're building a collective team of people with the right balance of skills and the right cultural alignment to build something amazing.
Yeah.
You know, um. So yeah, there's
Yeah,
there's
Dan,
there's
have
all
you have
sorts.
you I think you probably have heard this, but I did that Clifton Strengths thing a
Hmm.
while back. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's like a one of those kind of profiling things. And like I read the book like I don't often read because I just get so distracted, but I've read 2 books recently, cover to cover. This one, first of all, which is The Coaching Habit by Michael
Yeah.
Bungay, and then the other one is this Clifton Strengths. And like it's just common sense, some of the stuff that they say in there, and you think, well, I've never read that before. But so in this book, it says basically, what if I gave you the secret for you to know how your team operate and what your team's strengths and weaknesses are? And I was like, okay, well, surely you just ask them those questions. But I don't think I've ever been in a role where someone actually asked me, what are your, apart from in an interview, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses?
Mm-hmm.
If you know collectively in a group of, say, maybe 8 individuals, what your strengths and weaknesses are, the chances are those strengths are going to be different in different people, right? And the weaknesses
Mm-hmm.
are going to be different in different people. So you just get to know what their strengths are and play to them. I mean, that's
Well,
it. I mean,
and going
it
back to
just blew my mind at this. Like, of course, like,
But
we'd
but
love
don't
that.
forget one thing with that, John, is
Yeah,
we mentioned this phrase psychological safety, which is
yeah,
really important that we talked about earlier. To ask questions and get the truthful answer,
right.
you need to have that environment. So if we've got a
yes,
psychologically unsafe environment and I go, "What are your strengths, John?" You'd be like, "Everything. I'm awesome."
no weaknesses,
You are
nothing.
awesome,
Do
Yeah,
you know
but
what?
yeah, okay, yeah. I see
And
what you mean.
I
Yeah,
always talk about that when we interview people, right? Like, people are so scared that they don't feel safe, and so I'll say, like, what are your opportunities? What are you guys good at, right? And I'm just so much of a perfectionist. I'm like, no, that doesn't count. That is not like
yeah,
actually what you're talking about, right? But and it's going back down to what we were talking about just a few minutes ago. So one of the things I like to do, I had to learn this the hard way. Not everybody thinks like me, and not everybody wants what I want out of their job, right?
Mhm,
And so
mhm,
when I made this pivot as a leader where I started asking people like, what do you want to do? Are you trying to move up to the next level? Do you want to stay as a developer or are you looking to be a consultant? So, and, and it amazes me. I have people on my team who are like quite happy just being a developer, no
yep,
interest in developing a skill set in consulting or in the solution
mm,
architect world. I want to sit at my computer. I want to code apps. You know, Again, if they listen to this, they're gonna call me out, but, I got a guy who's his cat is always on his lap, right, when we're in Teams calls, so he has his cat on his lap and he's coding, right, and his cat we actually nominated him as our union representative, by the way, so Jerry the cat gets a shout out, right, but it's why would I try to force him into a different role when he's actually doing what he enjoys? And just
yeah.
because I say I want more than that, doesn't mean that
mhm,
everybody in the team
And
does.
then you end up pushing them away.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And they're miserable, right?
yeah.
Because now
Right.
it's like, you're forcing me to do this thing that I don't want to do. I don't want to be good at this.
mhm,
I don't want to
Yeah,
be like the best
yeah,
consultant ever. I actually want a dev.
yeah,
yeah.
Dev. I
And
need that.
I've had similar scenarios where you have your sort of junior consultant, senior lead, solution architect, principal, varying different degrees and structures around different organizations. But I've had people in a lower tier being highly effective managers, line
Yes.
managers of people in a higher tier. But I get traditional or have had traditional pushback around the corporate frameworks and hierarchies from a traditional landscape saying, "Oh no, they're a tier 6. They can't possibly
yeah,
manage a tier 7 person." And I'm like, "But the tier 7 person doesn't want to be a manager." Like
No.
like ridiculously does not want to be a team manager and would be a terrible one for anyone that will report into them by their own admission. Yet the tier 6 person is really wants to develop those management skills, loves developing and seeing people grow and things like that. And you know, you put that person in that line management position and everyone thrives. The tier 7s have got a line manager who truly believes in their development, their progression and developing their skills. And the tier 6 person is someone who doesn't care who they're managing. They just want to manage them effectively and develop those side of skills.
mm,
So I've always pitched line management as not a climb up the corporate ladder or give me a load more cash, because as soon as it becomes one of those two, then you're getting people moving into management for the wrong
yeah,
reasons, and then you get the wrong results.
yeah, yeah. Um, Dan, you mentioned the project triangle before, the RAID log, change requests, and statement of work. In fact, you mentioned statement of work just before we came on here as 3 artifacts every consultant should know. Can you walk us through why they're so fundamental and how you've seen projects go wrong when they're ignored?
You're making me out to be a right governance nerd now, aren't you?
No,
We
I just
all
know
have
you
a
like
little
triangles.
governance nerd
Both
in us.
hierarchy and needs, and now the project triangle.
I think Amy everywhere will be very proud of me when I talk about these kind of things. We've already talked about timesheets, so thumbs up for her anyway. So you're talking about project triangle, raid log, change request, statement of work. So those kind of four things. So for me, the project triangle is the overarching concept, right? Time, cost, scope, and then quality in the middle. The idea being that quality never changes, and the three variables on the outside are the variables, the things that change, and they need to all change within balance. For me, what I talk about is those artifacts, are often seen in the wrong light. A change request is seen as a cost. A statement of work is seen as a legal document. A raid log is seen as an admin overhead. Those kind of things. You see that side of things, whereas I see them as, well, actually, when you're talking about a raid log, well, I don't want to deal with issues. Who wants to be in a project where you're just constantly firefighting? No one raises their hand, right? So the idea of a raid log being something, well, I'm going to identify a risk before it happens and before it turns into an issue, rather than just being an
Yeah.
issue log, which we find on lots of projects where you go, oh yeah, so and so's happened, great, now we need to go and fix so and so. But we could have avoided it if we'd planned to realize that we'd made a project plan where everyone's working over Christmas, without thinking about it. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
A statement of work, you see it as a legal document, but really it's alignment, it's expectation setting. That statement of work is saying, both parties, if what we do in this statement of work gets done, both parties are going to be literally marching happy at the end of this project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we start deviating from that without change control, then both parties are going to be unhappy, for different reasons,
And that's all
If
about
you-
that mutual beneficial relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes we always think when we use statements of work as a legal battle, we instinctively, I think if we win an argument, we've won the battle and we're gonna end up in a better place. Quite often it's the opposite,
Yeah.
because if you're winning an argument that changes the state of that statement of work, then something's going to buckle because you fundamentally change one of those project triangle variables without compensating for some of the others. So client getting some free work that have you done, well, you've just increased the scope, but you haven't increased the time or the cost. So guess what gets impacted? The quality.
Yes.
Dan, where does so you say time, cost, quality, and I forgot the third one, sorry.
Time, cost, scope, and then
Time, cost,
quality in the middle.
quality. What about trust as a factor? In
Trust.
that, yeah. So like, you said then if statement of work becomes a legal document and you're having an argument contractually about something where really, that argument probably didn't need to happen, that will degrade the client's trust in you, right?
It does degrade.
So could trust feature in that setup somewhere?
Oh yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, my instinct is to say there's a circle that wraps the entire triangle, but I'd probably need to think on it more clearly to understand how that would impact. But I think I'll probably go away and do that as a pet project now because that's really interesting.
Okay, cool.
But trust comes from everywhere, right? Trust doesn't just come from documents. It comes from the relationships that you build with the individuals, both internally as a team, but externally as an entire project team. It's how you write your statements of work. If you write them in an obviously vague and fluffy or complicated legalese way, like you're eroding trust because you're almost coming across like you're trying to hide something or avoid something. So there's all manners of way trust can get eroded on the project to avoid.
So that's really interesting because at the beginning of the call, when John was talking about you starting your own company and what motivated you to do that, right? And you talk about really being able to enact your vision rather than operating within constraints. We find that a lot commercially, don't we? Where we put something together, if you work for an organization, you put something together commercially. And sometimes we run into that situation where somebody wants us to alter the statement of work or the document or what we've put together in a way that now makes us feel like, because you're saying like, we've got to establish a trust for that. But then we maybe get a directive that says, "Ooh, I don't like it. Now they're making me change this thing." So for a consultant, like I know for me, I still have the conversation with the client and I just am very transparent and I let them know everything going on. What kind of guidance would you give to somebody who's like, "Oh, I went to Dan's session, I got this great information, and now I'm at work and they're not letting me do the thing." What's
Mm.
your advice around that?
So I think it'd be pivot the narrative. When you're in a situation where the scope is at risk, something wants to change. The instinct is everyone goes cost. Okay, it's going to cost more. Okay, so for me, it's about leading, not leading with that cost, that cost implication. It's leading with an investment implication. So okay, you want to change the scope of what we're doing. Why? Going back to the thing. Why do you
Yeah,
want to do that? Well, you want to do this because you feel it's got value, right?
yeah,
If I want to change that form from pink to blue, I get it. That's cool. But you've got a reason because that might be really, really important for you to do. That might have some kind of either risk mitigation or cost saving or revenue generation triggering activity. So I'm going to go, oh right, okay, you want to do something different or or add something. That's fantastic. What kind of investment opportunity is this? So you want to change it to blue. What's the knock-on effects? Is that saving some money somewhere, or is it generating you some revenue somewhere? So you change the narrative from, oh, I've got to find more cost, to actually you're making an investment, a wise investment, to get some extra functionality or change something that actually is going to have a beneficial outcome on the project. The project's delivering here. With this scope change, it's going to deliver up here. Yes,
yeah,
there may be a cost involved in it, but you've moved past the cost focus because you're thinking about, oh, if I make this change, that's a 50 grand saving a month. Well, that's a no-brainer. We should absolutely be doing this. Or
yeah,
well, if we don't make that blue, we might have an accessibility issue, and actually that could like impact our employee satisfaction or our user satisfaction. So that's going to have a negative impact. So actually, I think it's a worthwhile investment to make that form blue rather than pink, because that contrast doesn't go well. I'm making this up as I go, but
of
you know what
course, of
you know what I
course,
mean.
yeah,
Um, so I think that's my main advice is swap that narrative. Our default is, oh, change cost. You know, no, this is a positive thing. You found something that is needed, that's going to be beneficial. This is an investment in the future. It's going to be beneficial. Otherwise, you wouldn't be thinking about doing it. Okay. And if cost becomes an issue, then you think about the entire scope of the project and go, right, well, okay, if it's going to take 5 days to do this change, have we got 5 days already in the scope that actually isn't that important or isn't going to deliver us beneficial improvements? And we just swap those out.
And that's and
yes,
that and that's actually thinking about it. That's going back to that trust circle,
Mhm.
because as the trusted advisor, you're saying, well, actually, the investment now in what you're trying to do may mitigate further investment later. So
Yes.
therefore, that trust becomes even greater, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And that is a real big thing for partners to get on board with, and consultants to understand, is you are not you're not just a partner, you're not a supplier or vendor or whatever term you want to use. You want to become a trusted partner. You want to be someone who is proactive, that they come to for advice because they trust your opinion, you know. So
And I think that's
activities.
got to be
Yeah,
top to bottom, right? That's got to be
yeah,
everyone from the CTO to the sales guys to the consultants to
yes,
the people
absolutely.
on the team,
Integrity
on
through
the
and
phone,
through.
everything. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That's why I baked ethos into my name.
Love it. Um, is it time, John, for us to ask our favorite question of the podcast?
Yes, it is. So, Dan, as you know, we've got this section called Uncomfortable Corner. When was the last time you felt uncomfortable in or outside of work? Could you explain how you felt, how you managed to get through it, and what you learned from it, and what you would do differently or the same if you're in a similar position next time?
Well, I'm actually so glad that this is something standard that you do, so I could actually go, oh, I know this is coming. because I feel uncomfortable all the time, especially as a solopreneur. I'm facing challenges every day. They're good, interesting challenges. Some of them are painful, but I think I was thinking about like which one to use, quite frankly. And I thought it was one I've written an article on, but because it's one that sort of resonates with me is, as you know, John, I obviously just created Strathos, and I spent 6 months creating a website, you know, and, I was quite proud of my website. I've been tinkering around with it and playing around. It's just, yeah, I could do this web development thing. Yeah. I'm a technologist, so of course I can do a website. And then spent 6 months tinkering around with it, and then passed it to some very trusted friends to sort of say, hey, what do you think? And it was kind of like, well, the content's okay, but the website isn't. And it was like, oh,
Ooh,
okay,
it's a
right.
hard one to take, don't it?
And,
Right.
and,
Hard
and,
one.
and it was kind of like popping that balloon and kind of like, oh, it's about to go live next week. Okay. But what it did was, first off, going back to trust. I trust my network of people, who are more knowledgeable in different things than I am. I'm in there with network because of my strengths. They're in my network because of their strengths, right?
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and the feedback I got was like hard, and it was hard, just as hard for them to give it as it was for me to receive it. But having that feedback made me pivot and maybe rethink about things about the business, things about the technology. How even important is my website compared with other things that are happening around the business? And it really made me challenge and think about things and go, you know what? I could be that guy who ignores that advice from someone I trust,
Mm.
and plow on, and pretend I didn't ask them, you know, but who's that hurting? It's only hurting myself. I've got to get over
Yep.
myself.
And,
Yeah.
Dan, like I do understand why people have a website, but for you, like you are your brand, right? I
Mhm.
think you really, really, out of all the people I know, you really personify what your brand is about. Like you've really thought about its name, you've thought about its logo, and I'm wondering if does a website cheapen that in some way? Like you are that person. That's what you do day to day, and you just need to have a conversation with you to understand where your strengths are. And I wonder if a website is the front door to you when really you're the front door to your business.
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you very much for those words.
I
That's
agree.
lovely.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah, I
Like
do
it's
think
just some people
you're a
are
really good, you're a really solid guy. And yeah, and that's not just me saying that. That's a lot of people who say that. And a lot of people have a lot of time for you. And it's kind of like word of mouth, really, right? Like
Mhm.
if I even where I am, if I saw something where I thought actually I know Dan's the guy for that, I would put those two together. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, my main lead generation activities are through thought leadership, through speaking, through networking. It's people coming to me because they know who I am or what I do, and hopefully what I can do for them. Help
yeah.
those partners burst through those growth barriers. That's what I'm all about. The only thing I would say, and I do get what you mean about the website. I think to operate for certain organizations,
Mm,
you have to. It's almost like a credibility checkbox.
yeah.
You know, I've got a LinkedIn company page. I've got my personal profile, so they know me. They know what Strathos is all about. But there's something about a website which is kind of like oh, okay, they're real. Because I operate with people who have never heard of me before.
Okay.
And for
Yep.
those, it becomes like, okay, right, that's a checkbox. Done
Yeah.
done that piece. We can move on. So I will get a website. To be fair, you've offered to build me one. Joel's offered to build me one. Sean built me one on a phone call the other day. Franco's helped. Nathan sat there next to me in color cloud. I went, "Do you want a website like this? It's there. I've just built
Awesome.
it." It's just like, okay, everyone's more clever at me than building websites. I get it.
Well, and but that goes back to what were we saying earlier? Sometimes you just have to know what you don't have to be the best at everything, do
Yeah,
you?
Right. Right.
absolutely,
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
I just like I I find that I've become so much better at what I'm doing by saying, I'm not good at these bits, and I know somebody who is, so I'm gonna let them do
Yeah.
it. And then I'm gonna get on and do the stuff that I'm really, really good at.
So true.
And people will say, like when I'm coaching and stuff like that and trying to help people build those consultancy skills, and I'll always hear, I can't be like you, Heather. I can't be like you when you're in front of a client. And it's like, but don't be like me. Be like you. Like figure
Mhm.
out where you're most comfortable, what you're most comfortable saying
Yeah.
and presenting, and just embrace that. And then if you need some help in another area, just pull somebody in to help you. I do it all the time. I live
Oh,
in my
100%.
space, right?
100%.
My
Yeah.
space. Ask me about Power Platform. Ask me about AI. Ask me about Copilot Studio. You're gonna get all the information. And then when you're like, oh, so I have a question about identity. I'm like, oh, I got a guy. Let me get the guy. Because like I don't want to talk about that. And I'm not the best at it. Right. And
Yeah,
so it's okay.
absolutely. Yeah, and this is what I advocate for in pretty much all of my coaching and mentoring programs. You know, it comes up time and time again, and I go back to that sort of. I use this model in my imposter syndrome talks about your network and the fact
Yeah.
that actually you operating on on your own is a weakness. Trying to know everything, you operating within a network, and even as an introvert like me, you putting a little bit of effort to try and find those superheroes that complement the areas you don't like or don't want to get
Yes.
into, and you let those other people know what your super strengths are to hopefully be counterbalancing their similar areas of disinterest and things like that, and you both gain. You know, I'm very, very fortunate to have such a strong network of people that
Yes.
I can just reach out to, going, that's not my bag, that's not my bag, that's not my bag.
Yeah.
But I know some absolutely awesome people who will run rings around it.
And then when you do that, I don't know. I guess I'm speaking for you, but whatever. It's who I am, Dan. Accept it. No, but I feel like when we do that, I get even better at the stuff I'm good at, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm allowed to just
Yeah,
zero in on it, right, John?
you're
Yeah.
focusing
Because
that
Yeah.
energy. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
yes,
Yeah,
Yeah.
rather than trying to be successful at something that is not me, I'm
yeah.
like, take that energy, make me better,
Yeah.
right?
But
Yeah.
it's
And
not only a model that fits to individuals, right? This is a model
no,
that fits to businesses. You take a
yes,
partner, you know, you look at a partner who does a bit of everything, you know, small partner does a bit of everything. So that means the sales teams are working on every technology and every solution and every service. The marketing teams are trying to market every solution and every service and every technology. The delivery teams, you know, who are small, you know, are trying to be unicorns because the breadth, their energy focus is a broad spectrum as opposed to a
yes,
narrow beam.
Yeah.
And if you
yes,
get it down to narrow beams, you focus and excel, then your margins improve, your revenue improves, your morale improves. All these things are great. And then you can go, right, well, I'm going to develop a second beam. And that second beam is going to focus on this, you know, whether it's an industry or a technology or a particular service. So, you know, that is progressive growth as opposed to just having this broad spectrum. You know, it applies to businesses and individuals. Your growth slows, your development growth slows, the broader your spectrum is.
Yeah.
yeah.
Totally. Right. Now I'm going to see you lovely humans on Saturday.
I'm
But,
so excited,
but
so
yeah,
excited.
and my wife
Yeah.
and kids are coming as well. Good luck.
Amazing. I think there's even some dogs coming.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
I hear there is a dog.
oh,
Yeah, yeah. So first of all, just want to say thanks, Dan, for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it, man. And I really hope that you go from strength to strength with Strathos. I love what you're doing, man. It's good.
Thank you,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
Thank you.
And
yeah.
to the lovely Heather, love your nails. I love the purple nails, by the way.
Do you like
So
the
good.
purple?
Yeah.
This is like, yeah,
Are you going to have
it'll
them at
be
the
there.
weekend? Because my
We'll have
daughter
them
is
at the
going to
weekend
love you.
with, and you know what? I will have the sparkly shoes as well. So
Nice.
that's just,
Brilliant.
I think we might even see some sparkly hair. I don't know, but you know,
Awesome.
it's it'll be fun. I'm so
Okay.
excited to see you guys. I'm so excited that we were able to do this today. And yeah, if this, because this is airing after we see each other this weekend, so hopefully there's not like a big news story that breaks from the three of us all being together at the same time.
Nice one. Okay.
No, it's been absolutely awesome. Thank you so much. I love what you guys are doing with Sprint Zero. It's phenomenal.
Nice one. Thank you, Dan.
Oh,
Cheers.
thank you,
Right.
Dan. Thanks,
See you later,
guys.
everybody.
Amazing. Love you all.
Bye-bye.
Take care,
Bye-bye.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.